"Mom, your card has been declined." The cashier said it softly, almost apologetically. I stared at her, smiled politely, tried again, declined. Behind me, the line shifted, impatient sighs, shuffling feet. I opened my banking app, and that's when I saw it. Available balance, $0, not low, not pending, zero. Every account. Savings, checking, business reserve, frozen. There was a notification at the top. Account restricted, due to signature dispute and fraud investigation. Fraud. I don't commit fraud, but someone had, and they had used my name. I walked out of the grocery store without the bags, sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, breathing slow, because panic is loud, and I don't do loud. I called the bank. After 12 minutes on hold, a woman answered. "Ma'am, a signed authorization was submitted yesterday, transferring substantial funds to a secondary account. The signature on file has been flagged as contested." "Contested by who?" I asked. There was a pause. "By your co-authorized emergency contact, your brother." Silence. Then she added softly, "He claims you were coerced." Coerced. I almost laughed. My brother Daniel hadn't called me in 3 weeks, but now he was contesting signatures on my account? Let me explain something about Daniel. He's charming, polished, the kind of man who knows how to smile in courtrooms. 3 years ago, he borrowed $25,000 from me to save his startup. It failed. He said he'd pay me back. He never did. But I never took him to court. Because he's family, and family is supposed to fix things quietly. Apparently Daniel had different plans. The bank wouldn't tell me everything over the phone, so I drove there. The branch manager was waiting when I arrived. She didn't look hostile. She looked cautious. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "a transfer of $187,000 was initiated from your savings into an account ending in 4421. That's not my account." "I'm aware. The documentation includes a signed authorization form with your notarized signature." Notarized. I never signed anything. She slid the paper across the desk. And there it was. My name. My handwriting. Almost perfect. Almost. But something was wrong. The capital L in my last name curved differently. A tiny thing. A microscopic detail. But Daniel didn't know something about me. I've signed contracts for 15 years. My signature is muscle memory. And that wasn't it. He thought I didn't know. He forgot one thing. I keep records. Every contract, every signature variation, every notarized document I've ever signed, including the original specimen signature on file with the bank. And I also keep something else. A forensic document examiner on retainer. Daniel didn't know that, but he was about to. I didn't go home. I went to my office. Not because I needed to work, but because I needed access. Files, archives, original signature cards, contract binders. If Daniel wanted to play documentation, we were going to play documentation. My assistant Marisol looked up when I walked in. "You're early," she said. "I need the 2016 to 2024 signature binders," I replied. She didn't ask questions. That's why I trust her. Within minutes, they were on the conference table. 8 years of contracts, every version of my signature. Because signatures evolve slightly over time. Pressure changes, angles shift, spacing adjusts. But patterns don't lie. I called Victor. "Tell me you're free," I said when he answered. Victor Hale is a forensic document examiner, retired federal consultant, the kind of man banks call when things get ugly. "For you," he said calmly, "always." I scanned the forged authorization and sent it over. Then I sent 15 samples of my real signature across different years. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he said, "Oh, that wasn't a good oh. That's layered tracing," he continued. "They didn't freehand this. They projected it. Probably used a lightbox or digital overlay. But they made 2 mistakes. Tell me." 1. Hesitation marks on the downward stroke of your capital L. That happens when someone follows a guide. And 2, the pen pressure doesn't match your natural wrist torque. You're right-handed with a forward lean, This leans backward. Daniel's left-handed. I close my eyes for a moment, not in sadness, in confirmation. Victor continued, if you want, I can draft a preliminary opinion letter by tomorrow morning. I want a full affidavit. There was silence. You're pressing charges? Yes. Here's what Daniel didn't understand. Freezing my accounts was bad. Forging my signature? That's a felony. Using a false sworn statement? Another felony. If that notary was complicit, that's conspiracy. He thought this was a family dispute. It wasn't. It was fraud. By noon, I received something unexpected, a text from Daniel. Hey sis, bank called me. Weird glitch. I'm fixing it. A glitch. $187,000 isn't a glitch. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, don't panic. I had to protect your money. You've been acting irrational lately. I stared at that message. Irrational? This from the man who once tried to expense a jet ski as office equipment. He called me. I let it ring. Then I answered on the 4th try. Why didn't you tell me? He asked immediately. Tell you what? That I froze the transfer to protect you. You could hear it in his voice. Confidence. He thought I was still confused. I saw the documents, I said calmly. Good, he replied. Then you understand. No, I said softly. I understand you forged my signature. Silence. Then a small laugh. Come on. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. You submitted a notarized authorization transferring $187,000 to your personal account. It was temporary, he snapped. You've been making reckless financial decisions. Like what? You donated to that legal fund last month. I blinked. A legal defense fund for a small contractor wrongfully sued. You don't get to decide what's reckless with my money. I'm your brother, he said sharply. If you spiral, it affects the family. Spiral. I've grown my company 400% in 5 years. Spiral. Interesting word choice. Then he said the sentence that made this personal. If you push this, it won't look good for you. I went very still. Explain. You don't want people digging into your finances either. There it was, a threat, not loud, not direct, but clear. Daniel thought leverage would scare me. He forgot something. I don't hide things. He does. Daniel, I said evenly. Who notarized the form? Pause. That's irrelevant. No, I replied. It's very relevant. Why are you turning this into something ugly? He snapped. I was helping you. You structured the withdrawals under federal reporting thresholds. Silence. That silence told me everything. You think I don't understand finance? I continued. You staggered the transfers in $9,800 increments. He exhaled slowly. You're overreacting? No. I was reacting appropriately. When we hung up, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, crystal clear. Daniel believed family meant immunity. He believed charm was protection. He believed I'd choose silence over exposure. He was wrong. At 3:17 p.m., I received the preliminary forensic opinion. Victor didn't mince words. The signature on the questioned document is not authored by the account holder. Evidence of mechanical tracing is present. Clean, direct, devastating. I forwarded it to the bank's fraud department. And then I did something Daniel would never expect. I called our parents. My mother answered. Sweetheart, she said warmly. Did Daniel mention my accounts? I asked. A pause. Yes, she said carefully. He said you were being irresponsible. Irresponsible. Interesting how that word keeps appearing. He forged my signature, Mom. Silence. Then softly. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. It's not. Don't ruin your brother over money. There it was. Not is he okay? Not are you okay? Don't ruin him. Because protecting him had always been the family reflex. Even when he wrecked his first car. Even when he defaulted on loans. Even when he blamed others. Daniel was the golden son. I was the stable one. Stable people are expected to absorb damage quietly, not this time. Mom, I said calmly, this isn't about money. It sounds like it is. It's about criminal fraud. She inhaled sharply. You wouldn't press charges against your own brother. Watch me. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, he threatened me. Another pause. He wouldn't. He did. Silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, think about the family. I already had. That's why this was happening. By evening, the bank escalated the case internally. Fraud investigators were assigned, the notary was flagged, and Daniel's destination account was temporarily frozen. He called again. This time his voice wasn't confident. What did you do? Nothing, I said calmly. Just told the truth. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. No, I replied softly. You did. But Daniel still believed something dangerous. He believed I wouldn't go all the way. He believed blood ties create hesitation. He believed I cared more about family image than justice. And that belief was about to cost him everything. If you think this is where he backs down, you're wrong. Because the next morning, Daniel escalated. And what he tried next wasn't just fraud, it was intimidation. The next morning, Daniel didn't call. He showed up at my office, unannounced. Marisol buzzed me. Your brother is here. He says it's urgent. Of course it is. I told her to send him in. He walked in like he owned the place. Perfect suit, perfect smile, slight irritation behind his eyes. He closed the door. You're overplaying this, he said immediately. No hello, no apology, just control. I don't think I am, I replied calmly. He paced once across the room. You got my account frozen. You transferred $187,000 into it. It was temporary. It was criminal. His jaw tightened. You actually hired someone to analyze the signature? Yes. He laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. You're unbelievable. No. I'm thorough. He stepped closer to my desk. You don't understand how ugly this can get. There it was again. Not remorse, threat. Explain, I said. You press charges? Everything becomes public. Audits, scrutiny. Reporters love stories like this. Reporters? Interesting escalation. You think this makes you look good? He continued. Successful businesswoman sends brother to prison? I studied him. He wasn't worried about prison. He was worried about image. Daniel always managed perception. He curated it, polished it, protected it. Daniel, I said evenly, you forged my signature. He leaned forward. And you're about to destroy your family over paperwork. Paperwork. That's what he reduced it to. Not theft, not fraud. Paperwork. I'm going to ask you once, he said quietly. Drop it. There it was. The entitlement. He truly believed I would. You structured the transfers under reporting limits, I replied calmly. You fabricated a sworn affidavit. And you involved a notary. His face changed. Not panic. Calculation. How much did they tell you? He asked. Enough. He straightened. Fine, he said. You want honesty? I needed liquidity. For what? That's not your concern. It absolutely was. You were fine with payroll being compromised? I asked. He didn't answer, which meant yes. Then he said something that shifted the entire case. You weren't going to miss it. I went still. Excuse me? It's not like you live paycheck to paycheck. You've been sitting on reserves. Reserves. Money I earned. Money I built. Money that wasn't his. You thought I wouldn't notice $187,000? He shrugged slightly. Eventually you'd see it. I would have repaid it. Like the $25,000? Like the car loan our parents co-signed? Like the investor advances he never disclosed? Repayment wasn't part of Daniel's vocabulary. I slid a printed copy of the forensic preliminary opinion across the desk. He didn't touch it. Mechanical tracing, I said softly. Pen pressure mismatch. Left-hand orientation. Silence. You always were dramatic, he muttered. You're left-handed, I replied. That landed. He blinked once. Who else knows? He asked. The bank, the fraud department, my attorney. That wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be. His breathing shifted, slower, more deliberate. You really think they'll prosecute? He asked. Yes. And you'll testify? Without hesitation. Yes. He stared at me for a long time. Then something colder surfaced. You don't know everything, he said quietly. I didn't react. What does that mean? He smiled faintly. You'll see. Then he turned and walked out. No apology. No regret. Just a warning. 30 minutes later, my CFO called. There's an inquiry from a regulatory compliance unit requesting clarification on last quarter's vendor disbursements. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened. Daniel. He had triggered a review. Probably anonymously. Probably implying misconduct. If he couldn't control the narrative, he would contaminate it. Here's what Daniel forgot. Every transaction in my company is documented. Every vendor wanted scrutiny. I'd welcome it. By 2 p.m., wanted scrutiny? I'd welcome it. By 2 p.m., I had confirmation. The compliance inquiry originated from an anonymous tip, time-stamped 1 hour after Daniel left my office. Predictable. He was trying to create pressure, to make me nervous, to make me doubt pressing charges. But intimidation only works when there's something to hide, and I don't hide. At 4:42 p.m., Victor called again. I dug deeper, he said. That notary? She's been flagged before. For what? Improper verification procedures? Sloppy identity confirmations? Sloppy or complicit? Hard to say yet. Daniel always chooses weak links. People who bend, people who don't verify, people who assume. He underestimated something critical. Banks don't like internal fraud. They pursue it aggressively. That evening I received official confirmation. The bank's legal department was referring the case to external authorities. Not because I demanded it. Because the evidence required it. Forgery. Structured transfers. False affidavit. Conspiracy potential. Daniel had crossed into territory that doesn't disappear quietly. My phone rang at 9:13 p.m. Unknown number, I answered. Are you happy now? Daniel's voice. You escalated, I said calmly. You forced my hand. No, I corrected softly. You forged my signature. Long silence. Then something different. Fear. They'll ruin me, he whispered. No more charm. No more control. They'll investigate everything. They should, I replied. You don't understand how far this goes. I almost smiled. Oh, I said quietly. I understand exactly how far it goes. Because what Daniel didn't know? The bank wasn't the only one reviewing documents. And when investigators started pulling account histories, they wouldn't just find one forged authorization. They would find a pattern. And patterns tell stories. Stories Daniel can't spin. If you think intimidation would make me fold, you don't know me. And if you think Daniel's worst mistake was forging my signature, you haven't seen what the investigators found next. Subscribe and stay with me. The investigators didn't start with Daniel. They started with me. That's how it works. When fraud is reported, everyone gets examined. Even the victim. Especially the victim. 2 days later, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room at the bank's regional headquarters. Across from me, a fraud investigator, a compliance officer, an external counsel. They weren't hostile. They were methodical. Walk us through your relationship with the subject, the investigator said. Subject, not your brother. Subject. I appreciated that. I told them everything. The $25,000 loan, the failed startup, the unpaid promises, the recent distance. I gave them texts, emails, call logs. Then they asked something I wasn't expecting. Has he ever had access to your financial records before? Yes, I said carefully. Years ago, when we briefly discussed a joint investment. How brief? 3 weeks. Did he retain copies of anything? There it was. I thought back. Shared tax summaries, projected asset sheets, signature samples attached to wire authorizations. Daniel never deletes files. He archives leverage. The compliance officer slid a printed sheet toward me. These transfers, she said. It wasn't just the $187,000. There were smaller movements. 3 months ago. $8,500 6 weeks ago, $9,200 2 weeks ago, $7,750. My eyes narrowed. I didn't authorize these. We suspected that, she replied calmly. They were structured, under internal alert thresholds, but recurring, careful, almost invisible. Daniel hadn't just attempted one large theft. He'd been testing boundaries, sampling access, seeing what he could move without detection. The $187,000 wasn't impulsive. It was escalation. Why weren't these flagged earlier? I asked. They were categorized as internal reallocations under pre-authorized parameters, the investigator said. Pre-authorized? Years ago, during that short-lived joint venture conversation, I had added Daniel temporarily as a secondary verification contact. Not account holder, but notification contact. A technical vulnerability. One I removed, or thought I removed. Can you confirm when he was removed? The investigator asked. I couldn't. Because I assumed it was processed. Assumption. My only mistake. Daniel had kept a foot in the system. A quiet one. Then came the moment that shifted the tone. The investigator leaned forward. We subpoenaed the receiving account history. I didn't react. What did you find? I asked. Your brother's account shows immediate outgoing transfers following receipt. To where? The compliance officer answered. An LLC. Registered 8 months ago. Name? She read it. Mercer Strategic Holdings. I almost laughed. Daniel doesn't do subtle. Who owns it? I asked. The investigator held my gaze. Not directly your brother. Then who? Your father. Silence filled the room. My father. Retired accountant. Meticulous. Conservative. The one who always told me to document everything. I kept my expression neutral. Explain, I said. The LLC was registered with your father as managing member. Your brother listed as operations consultant. The receiving transfers were redirected there within 24 hours. This wasn't desperation. This was infrastructure. Daniel hadn't planned to hold my money in his personal account. He built a vehicle for it, a shell, structured, layered, calculated. Are you suggesting my father was involved? I asked carefully. We're suggesting the funds moved through his registered entity. The investigator replied evenly. That distinction mattered. Involvement versus ownership. Knowledge versus ignorance. Suddenly, my mother's words echoed. Don't ruin your brother. Not, is this true? Not, let's understand. Just protection. Had they known? Had they believed Daniel's version? Or had they participated? When the meeting ended, I walked to my car slowly. This wasn't just betrayal. It was architecture. Daniel didn't just forge. He built a pipeline, a quiet siphon, testing, scaling, escalating. That night, I drove to my parents' house. Not to accuse, to observe. My father answered the door. He looked surprised, but not confused. Can we talk? I asked. He stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we did homework, where birthdays were celebrated, where Daniel once cried over a failed math exam. Is Mercer Strategic Holdings yours? I asked calmly. He froze for half a second, then recovered. It's a consulting vehicle. For what? Future investments? Funded by my accounts? Silence. My mother stood in the doorway, watching, listening, waiting. Daniel explained the situation. My father said slowly. What situation? That you were overexposed financially? That funds needed temporary safeguarding. Safeguarding. Interesting vocabulary. He forged my signature, I said evenly. My father didn't respond immediately. Then he said something that broke whatever illusion remained. He wouldn't do that without reason. Without reason. Not, he wouldn't do that. Without reason. Meaning justification existed. Meaning intent wasn't disputed. Only motive. I have forensic confirmation, I said quietly. My father's eyes flickered. You're involving authorities? Yes. My mother gasped. You can't. I already have. Silence expanded. Heavy. Unavoidable. My father leaned back in his chair. You're making this irreversible. No, I replied softly. Daniel did. You're going to destroy him. He destroyed himself. Another long pause. Then my father said something that told me everything. We were going to tell you. Tell me what? That it was a test, he continued, a test? To see if you monitor your accounts closely. I stared at him. A test involving $187,000? Forgery? False affidavits? LLCs? This wasn't a test. It was a failed extraction. You're lying, I said calmly. My father didn't deny it. He just looked tired. Daniel said you'd react like this. Like what? Rational? Documented? Legally? I stood. This is now in the hands of investigators, I said evenly. If you're involved, you need counsel. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father didn't argue. He just asked one question. Is there any way to stop this? There it was. Not apology. Not confession. Damage control. No, I said quietly. There isn't. When I drove away, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. This is Detective Harris, the voice said. We've been assigned to your bank fraud case. Assigned. Not reviewing. Assigned. Ms. Mercer, he continued, we've uncovered additional discrepancies, such as, there may be prior unauthorized transactions dating back further than originally believed. Further. How far? That's what we're determining, he said. Daniel's panic earlier suddenly made sense. This wasn't about one forged form. It was about exposure. Comprehensive exposure. The call came at 7:12 a.m. Not from Daniel, not from my father, from the notary. I need to speak with you, she said. Her voice was tight, controlled, but shaking underneath. I believe I made a mistake. A mistake. That's what people call it when intent becomes evidence. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. She looked nothing like the confident stamp and sign professional listed on the document. She looked nervous. I verified the ID, she said quickly. Your brother presented a passport. My passport? No, his. I didn't interrupt. He said you were traveling, that you authorized him to sign under limited power. I never granted power of attorney. She nodded. I realize that now. Now. She pulled something from her bag, a photocopy, the supporting documentation Daniel had provided. It was a fabricated limited authorization form, using my letterhead, my formatting, my digital signature block, layered, edited, almost convincing. Almost. You didn't call me? I asked. He said you were unreachable in a compliance-sensitive window. Compliance-sensitive window. Daniel loves terminology. It makes lies sound procedural. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Her jaw tightened. Because investigators contacted me this morning. There it was. Pressure works both ways. I didn't know the funds were personal, she added quickly. He implied it was a business restructuring. And the sworn affidavit? She swallowed. He wrote it in front of me. Did you witness me sign it? No. Silence. You notarized a document without witnessing the signature. Her eyes dropped. Yes. Improper procedure. Minimum? Potentially criminal. Did he compensate you beyond standard fees? I asked. Another pause. Yes. How much? $5,000. $5,000 for a 10-minute stamp. Daniel doesn't overpay unless silence is included. Why come forward? I asked. Her answer was simple. Because I have children. Fear shifts morality quickly. By noon, the detective called again. Your brother retained counsel, Detective Harris said. Already. Fast. He's claiming the funds were part of a verbal family investment agreement. Investment. That word again. Does he have documentation? I asked. Nothing signed by you. Of course not. Because forging once is risky. Forging twice is reckless. Then Detective Harris said something that shifted the scope entirely. We've identified 2 additional complainants. I went quiet. Other victims? Yes. Small business owners, friends of Daniel, short-term bridge funding arrangements. Funds moved, delayed, redirected, pattern. There it was. This wasn't the first time. It was the first time someone fought back. I sat in my office and replayed everything. The charm, the confidence, the entitlement. Daniel didn't think he was stealing. He thought he was reallocating, because in his mind, family assets are fluid, access equals ownership, and success equals entitlement. At 3:40 p.m., I received a call from my father. His voice was different. Lower. He didn't tell us everything, he said. Of course he didn't. What did he tell you? I asked. That it was temporary liquidity. For what? Silence. Then, debt. There it was. How much? He wouldn't say. But the fear in my father's voice told me enough. Not thousands, not tens of thousands. More. That evening, something unexpected happened. Daniel didn't call. His lawyer did. Ms. Mercer, the voice began smoothly. My client is open to mediation. Mediation. That's what you ask for when evidence is closing in. He is prepared to return the funds in full. Return? They were reversed already, I replied calmly. Yes, but damages can be resolved privately. Damages. They were trying to contain exposure. Keep it civil, keep it sealed, keep it quiet. Will your client admit to forgery? I asked. Pause. We believe this was a misunderstanding of authorization scope. Authorization scope. I almost admired the phrasing. Will he admit to structuring transfers under reporting thresholds? Silence. Longer this time. Our goal is resolution, not confession. Resolution. Tell your client, I said evenly, that the matter is with investigators. The lawyer shifted tone. Prosecution benefits no one. It benefits truth. It benefits deterrence. It benefits the next person he might target. That night, Daniel sent one final text. You're choosing money over family. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, no. I'm choosing integrity over manipulation. He didn't reply. The next morning, Detective Harris called again. They executed a warrant on Mercer Strategic Holdings. Warrant. My father's LLC. What did they find? I asked. Transfers beyond your case. My heart didn't race. It hardened. How many? We're still counting. Counting. Plural. And then he said the sentence that made everything clear. This isn't just fraud, Ms. Mercer. It may qualify as financial exploitation under enhanced penalty statutes. Enhanced penalties. Because victims weren't corporations. They were individuals. Trusting individuals. Including me. Daniel thought I'd protect him. He thought I'd negotiate quietly. He thought I'd absorb the damage. He forgot something fundamental. Protection requires honesty. And he had none left. Daniel wasn't arrested that week. Or the next. That's the part people don't understand about white-collar investigations. They don't move fast. They move quietly. They build. They document. They wait. 3 weeks passed. On the surface, everything looked normal. My accounts were restored. Payroll processed. Compliance inquiry closed with no findings. But underneath, subpoenas were flying. Bank records. LLC filings. Email metadata. IP logs. Patterns don't hide well under scrutiny. Then something unexpected happened. My father requested a meeting. Not at the house. At my office. Neutral ground. He arrived alone. No suit. No briefcase. No posture of authority. Just older. I need to tell you something, he said. I didn't interrupt. He's deeper than we thought. We. Interesting word choice. How deep? I asked. He exhaled slowly. There were investment guarantees. Guaranteed returns. Always a red flag. He promised short-term leverage plays. Said he had inside timing advantages. Inside timing advantages. Daniel always sells confidence. He convinced us it was strategic arbitrage. Arbitrage? My father's vocabulary, not Daniel's, which meant Daniel had studied his audience. How much did you invest? I asked quietly. My father didn't answer directly. Everything we set aside for retirement. Silence settled between us. Not dramatic, just heavy. And when it didn't perform? I asked. He said liquidity was temporarily locked. Locked. That word again. And he needed bridging capital. Bridging capital. That was me. I wasn't a sister. I was a bridge. Did you know he forged my signature? I asked. My father looked at the table. No. That answer felt different. Not defensive, not rehearsed, just ashamed. I believed him when he said you authorized temporary transfers. Belief can be expensive. That afternoon, Detective Harris called. We've confirmed over $1.2 million in structured movements through Mercer Strategic Holdings. I closed my eyes briefly. 1.2? Yes. Across multiple accounts, multiple victims, multiple months. This wasn't a lapse. It was a system. Is he cooperating? I asked. Not yet. Yet. Meaning pressure was building? 2 days later, Daniel called me. Not angry, not defensive, tired. They're going to charge me, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. You could stop it? No, I couldn't. And even if I could, I wouldn't. You're my sister, he continued. And you're my brother, I said. That didn't stop you. Silence. Then something raw surfaced. I was going to fix it. With whose money? He didn't answer. Do you know what scares me? He said suddenly. What? That I actually believed I deserved access. There it was. Not desperation. Entitlement. You built everything so fast, he continued. It felt unfair. Unfair. Because I worked. Because I documented. Because I didn't gamble. He mistook discipline for luck. I didn't think you'd go this far, he admitted. That's the problem, I said softly. You didn't think. The arrest didn't happen at dawn. No dramatic knock. No flashing lights. It happened at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, in a parking garage, after he left a meeting with his attorney. White-collar arrests are quiet, efficient, documented. Detective Harris called me an hour later. He's been taken into custody. No triumph, no celebration, just confirmation. What charges? I asked. Forgery, financial exploitation, wire fraud, conspiracy pending. Pending, meaning others were still under review. That evening, my mother called, crying. You've destroyed this family, she said. No, Daniel did. I warned him. My father's voice echoed faintly in the background. The first time I'd heard that tone. Regret. The arraignment was brief. Daniel looked smaller. Not physically. Energetically. Confidence drains quickly under fluorescent lights. He searched the courtroom. Found me. Held my gaze. There was no anger. Just disbelief. He still couldn't process it. That I chose law over loyalty. Integrity over image. The judge set bail. High. Based on financial risk. His attorney argued temporary lapse. Investigators argued structured scheme. The word pattern was used repeatedly. Patterns are hard to defend. When I walked out of the courthouse, reporters were outside. Small market, but visible. Ms. Mercer, do you regret pressing charges against your brother? I paused, careful. No, I said calmly. I regret that he gave me reason to. That was the only statement I made. The legal consequences were public. But the personal consequences? Those were quiet. And far more permanent. Daniel made bail. Of course he did. Friends posted it. Extended family whispered about it. Some said it was overblown. Fraud always sounds smaller when you remove the details. But details are where truth lives. He wasn't allowed to access financial systems. He surrendered his passport. He was prohibited from contacting certain witnesses, including me, which meant for the first time in our lives, we weren't speaking, not because of anger, because of court order. The first real consequence came a week later. His primary client terminated their contract. Public relations risk, that's how they phrased it. Professional distancing. When credibility cracks, businesses move fast, then 2 more clients withdrew, then another. Financial consulting depends on trust, and trust depends on perception. Once the word forgery enters your public record, perception shifts, irreversibly. My mother stopped attending her social club. Too many questions, too many sympathetic looks. Sympathy can feel like accusation. My father sold the LLC, or what was left of it. There wasn't much. Frozen assets don't generate income. I expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, something. Instead, I felt clarity, heavy but clean. Justice isn't loud, it's procedural. 3 weeks before the preliminary hearing, Daniel requested something unexpected, a meeting, through attorneys, neutral mediator present. I agreed, not for reconciliation, for closure. He looked thinner, not dramatically, just strained. I never meant to hurt you, he began. Intent doesn't erase action. You structured transfers for months, I replied calmly. He looked down. I thought I could outpace it. Outpace it, meaning earn fast enough to replace what he took. Gambling logic. You built slowly, he continued. I wanted to accelerate. Acceleration without foundation collapses. I thought if I could just bridge 1/4. Bridge. There's that word again. Except bridges require consent. I didn't think you'd call investigators, he admitted. That was honest. You thought I'd absorb it, I said. Silence. Then a small nod. Yes. He did. Do you regret it? I asked. He hesitated. Not long, but long enough. I regret getting caught. There it was. The last illusion dissolved. He didn't regret the theft. He regretted exposure. The mediator cleared her throat gently. Is there any possibility of civil settlement independent of criminal proceedings? I answered first. No. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. That was the moment he understood. There was no reversal, no quiet fix, no family override. The hearing was clinical, evidence summary, structured transaction logs, forensic signature analysis. The notary testified. She admitted improper verification. She admitted payment beyond standard fee. Her license was suspended pending review. Choices ripple. When the prosecutor displayed the signature comparison on screen, you could see it clearly. Hesitation marks, pressure inconsistencies, backward slant. Daniel didn't look at me. He looked at the table. The judge used a phrase that lingered. Breach of fiduciary trust within familial proximity. Legal language. Simple meaning. You exploited closeness. But here's what truly shifted everything. One of the other victims testified, a small restaurant owner. He trusted Daniel. Invested short-term operating cash. Lost payroll buffer. Nearly lost his lease. His voice shook. Not from anger. From embarrassment. That's the cost people don't calculate. Humiliation. Daniel didn't anticipate collateral damage. He thought it was isolated, controlled, contained. But fraud spreads. Quietly. After the hearing, I didn't approach him. I didn't speak. There was nothing left to say, because the real consequence wasn't prison time. It wasn't fines. It wasn't headlines. It was reputation. Once cracked, it never fully resets. A week later, Daniel entered a plea agreement. Reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation and restitution coordination. Cooperation means disclosure. Full disclosure of everything. When I received the final investigative summary, one line stood out. Primary catalyst for exposure. Refusal of initial victim to privately mediate. That was me. If I had accepted mediation, the pattern would have continued, with someone else. My mother eventually called. Not to argue, not to accuse, just to say quietly, I didn't see it. Neither did I. That's the problem with proximity. It dulls suspicion. You might think this story ends with sentencing. It doesn't. Because the final consequence wasn't legal, it was internal. Sentencing wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no collapse, no cinematic outburst. Just numbers. Restitution, probation terms, financial monitoring, professional restrictions. White-collar sentencing is quiet. It sounds like paperwork, but paperwork can cage a future. Daniel avoided prison time. First offense, full cooperation, restitution agreement. But probation isn't freedom, it's supervision, mandatory financial disclosure, restricted fiduciary activity, quarterly compliance reviews. For someone who built his identity around control, that's suffocating. The courtroom was almost empty. No reporters this time. No extended family. Just process. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Daniel stood. He didn't look at me. I convinced myself access was entitlement, he said. That was the most honest sentence he'd spoken. I believed proximity meant permission. There it was. Proximity means permission. That's how this started. The judge nodded once. Trust is not transferable, he said. Simple, clean, final. After sentencing, Daniel didn't approach me. He walked out with his attorney, smaller again, not defeated, just contained. The illusion of invincibility was gone. Life didn't explode afterward. It recalibrated. My company stabilized. The compliance review formally closed. Our vendors reaffirmed contracts. Crisis test systems, ours held, because I built them to withstand pressure. At home, something shifted too. My father came by one afternoon. No legal discussion, no strategy, just quiet. I mistook confidence for competence, he admitted. That wasn't about me. It was about Daniel, and maybe about himself. Belief without verification is negligence, I replied gently. He nodded. That lesson cost him retirement security. My mother needed longer. Grief moves in layers. First denial, then defense, then quiet recognition. One evening she said softly, "You were always the careful one." It sounded like apology. I accepted it as one. 6 months later, I received the first restitution installment. Automated, scheduled, monitored. It didn't feel satisfying. It felt procedural. Money doesn't repair betrayal. It documents consequence. People asked me if I'd do it again. Press charges, refuse mediation, testify publicly. Yes, without hesitation, because silence protects patterns, and patterns repeat. The hardest part wasn't the investigation, or the hearing, or the headlines. It was realizing something simple. Daniel didn't see me as a victim. He saw me as a resource. That clarity changed everything. We don't speak now. Not because of hatred, because of boundaries. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're architecture. They prevent collapse. A year later, my accounts are stronger than before. Not just financially, structurally, multi-layer verification, dual authentication, independent oversight. Trust is earned. Access is documented. Proximity is no longer permission. Sometimes I replay that first moment. The grocery store, the declined card, the zero balance. If I had laughed it off, if I had called him first, if I had chosen quiet, the pattern would still be active, just hidden. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something far more important. Integrity under pressure. When someone closed tests your boundaries, your response defines your future. If you've ever been told to keep it in the family, ask yourself why. Because secrecy doesn't protect family. It protects misconduct. If you stayed with me through this entire story, subscribe. Because stories like this aren't just drama. They're blueprints. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me below, what would you have done differently? Or would you have done the same? Justice doesn't shout. It documents. And when documented properly, it wins.